Part 20. Time passed, but not slowly. You could feel the tension, though everyone did his best to conceal it from his neighbor. Everyday tasks provided welcome relief. They took one's mind off the horror that might still be lingering over the camp. Jokes were forced, as was the laughter that greeted them. Outwardly, everything seemed normal, but suspicion and paranoia colored every word, every movement. Suspicion, paranoia, and a desperate fear. Palmer was working on the second snowmobile. He'd removed all the spark plugs from both, dismantled the carburetors, removed and concealed the gas filters. Now he was taking the engines off their mountings. They would go into the locked storage room, along with the vital components of the helicopters and the tractor. The mounting bolts and screws would be hidden elsewhere. MacReady was taking no chances. He was at work in the balloon tower with a kitchen knife, methodically slashing each of the huge uninflated weather balloons into uninflatable strips. There was no telling how long they might have to remain isolated before Fuchs could come up with a new test. It was unlikely, but a half-frozen gull or man-of-war bird might just drop into the camp. It would be better to take no chances. Birds could not be pursued. He finished the last of the balloons, then lingered over the tanks of hydrogen stored nearby, before deciding there was no need to empty them. There was nothing in camp their resident thing could surreptitiously combine to make a suitable envelope out of. The stereo in the kitchen wailed, its vibrant, undisciplined music easing the tension with the unconcern of a world that seemed a million miles away. Knowles hummed as he was removing the dishes from the washer and stacked them neatly on their proper shelf. Childs sighed. One hand scratched at an ear. The other flipped the pages of a thick magazine. The industrial torch, its new tip gleaming, lay close at hand. Clark, Copper, and the station manager dozed on the couch nearby. The effects of the morphine would be wearing off soon. Norris would be around to re-dose the trio, Childs knew. Clark stirred, rose and mumbled thickly at the guard. "Gotta go to the can, Childs." Making a face, the mechanic put down the magazine. He half carried the dog handler to the far end of the room and opened the door for him. "Be quick about it." Clark staggered into the head. A few seconds passed and the lights began to flicker. Childs looked around worriedly. They went out completely for a second, then came back on. "Oh no," the mechanic muttered. "No, not now, man." When they winked out the second time, it was for good. Along with the light, something else had vanished. A mechanical breathing so soft and steady, you quickly learned to ignore it. The purr of the generator. "Childs!" That was Knowles shouting from the kitchen. "That a breaker?" "No," Childs told him. "Breaker would have gone out instantly. There wouldn't have been any flicker. Listen, don't you hear it?" "Hear what, man?" came the reply. "I don't hear anything." "That's what I mean. The generator's gone. You got the controls for the auxiliary there in the hall next to you. They're opposite the door from the kitchen. Get to 'em!" He stumbled around in the darkness, cursing as he bumped into the card table. "Where's that damn flashlight?" Something fell from the table and hit the floor. Magazine, probably. "You fellas okay over there?" A giggle came from the couch, edgy and fearful. "Cut that out, copper." Childs hesitated. The flashlight should be in the corner on a shelf. He started feeling his way along the wall. "Knowles, what's taking you so long? It's straight out the door." "I know," came the nervous reply. "I found it. I'm working on it right now, but nothing's happening." "That's impossible, man." He reached the shelf and felt among the books and games. No flashlight. Turning back to the center of the room, he shuffled carefully back to the card table. "Okay, Clark, out of the John right now." "It's shorted out or something!" Knowles was yelling at him from down the corridor. Childs ignored the cook's lament. He wanted a response from the bathroom. "Clark! You hear me, Clark? You come on out of there, now!" When there was still no reply forthcoming, Childs felt around the table until he located the torch. It flared to life with gratifying speed. Blue fire filled the recreation room with ghostly but adequate illumination. He started towards the John, but something half-seen made him pause and turn the torch towards the couch. Where's Gary?" The station manager had disappeared. Copper was staring numbly at the empty cushion next to him. He and Childs were now alone. "Well, shit!" The mechanic groped for the portable siren and switched it on, thankful for the batteries that powered it. Palmer looked up from the now invisible snowmobile he'd nearly finished dismantling. McCready and Sanders pushed a path out of the trash dump and exchanged a glance with the assistant pilot. Soon, all three of them were loping towards the nearest entrance, making their way by flashlight through the long night. Childs twisted and spun at every little imagined noise, trying to keep the torch between himself and the darkness. "Where are you, Gary? Don't you move an inch, copper." The doctor giggled again, loudly. It did not improve the mechanic's already shaky state of mind. "Knowles! Bring me a goddamn flashlight!" The cook abandoned the useless control box and returned to the kitchen, feeling along his familiar cabinets until he reached a particular drawer. His hands moved along the contents, picking up spoons and spatulas and ladles, everything except what he was looking for. "Somebody's taken mine! I can't find it!" "Clark!" Childs turned the torch towards the bathroom. "You coming out of there, or you want me to come in after you?" McCready, Sanders, and Palmer stumbled into the hallway, bumping into each other as they fought to get their bearings in the unexpectedly dark corridor. McCready closed the door behind them. Their flashlights provided the only illumination. "What's happened?" McCready called out. When the outside lights had gone, he'd expected some trouble inside, but not this utter, complete blackness.
Anybody know what's happened? McCready! That you?
It was Norris.
Yeah, Palmer and Sanders are with me. What the hell's going on? I think it's the generator,
the geophysicist replied.
There's no power to anything, lights included. What about the backup? Beats me. All I know is everything's out.
McCready turned to his assistant.
All right, Palmer, let's get down there. McCready! That you, Childs? Yeah, I'm still in the room.
McCready's thoughts were racing.
You okay? Yeah, I'm fine, man. But Gary's missing.
Oh, shit. The pilot thought for a moment. They had other priorities right now.
Well, hang on. Gee, thanks.
The mechanic's voice was cheerless as it floated down the corridor.
What about power? Palmer and I are getting on it.
He started running up the corridor. The flashlight beam seemed weak and on the verge of failing as the two men stumbled down the short flight of stairs leading to the generator room. At the bottom, McCready hesitated, turned and searched the darkness with the light.
Sanders! Where's Sanders?
They examined the stairway together, then the floor and walls of the generator room. Sanders was gone. Palmer took a step back the way they'd come and asked unenthusiastically, You want me to go look for him?
No, not now,
McCready said impatiently.
We've got to get this mother going first, and then we can go looking for people.
They approached the silent mass of metal. It squatted like an armored dinosaur in the middle of the room. The smell of diesel, thick and noxious, was everywhere. But it was fading rapidly. Palmer used the light, inspecting components. The beam lingered on an open space near the base.
The fuel pump's gone.
Panic cracked his voice.
You've got to get up to supply and find another unit, Mac. If we don't get this thing started soon, it'll freeze up on us and we'll never get it going. What about the auxiliary? I know what's been done to this. I don't know about the other. You sure about the pump? That's all that's missing.
The flashlight beam retraced its path across the generator.
I think so. I don't see anything else. This is really Childs' department. Childs is busy,
McCready reminded his assistant.
Hang on. I'll be back as fast as I can. You want my light?
McCready glanced at his own feeble beam.
No, you keep it. Make sure nothing else has been jimmied.
He turned and rushed up the stairs, heedless of tripping in the near dark. Palmer just waited. It occurred to him that he was all alone in the lowest, most isolated area of the compound.
Hell, get your mind on something else.
he told himself. Holding the flashlight tightly in one hand, he lay down on his back and edged under the generator. At least he could make sure that everything else was ready to go. Of course, there was always the chance that MacReady might not return for a while. He might get distracted, or something else might distract him. Palmer furiously began tightening screws, regardless of whether or not they were loose. Childs paced the rec room floor, swatting his sides to keep warm. The temperature was falling rapidly, the Antarctic night leaching the heat from the compound, despite the multiple layers of insulation designed to keep it at bay. The torch lay on the card table, adding a little heat, its blue glow barely reaching to the corners of the room. Copper sat by himself on the couch. At least he'd stopped that infernal giggling, Childs mused gratefully. MacReady charged out of the supply room, juggling his flashlight and a new solid-state pump unit, and promptly careened off another body. Who's that? Who goes there? There was no reply. The dim silhouette hurried off down the hallway. Saunders, that you? You flipped out again, man? It's okay. It's me, MacReady. Hey, who? A dim voice drifted up from the other direction. Mac! Palmer sounded anxious. That you, Mac? Where the hell's that pump? Coming! He threw a last look down the hallway, but saw only darkness. Then he was running for the generator room. So intent was he on protecting the fuel pump that he nearly fell in his haste to get down the few stairs. Palmer's light beckoned from beneath the generator. MacReady dropped to his knees and put the unit close to the other pilot. Palmer backed out and joined him in tearing at the box. This going to do it? MacReady asked him. Palmer was studying the exposed unit. It's not the same. Hell. MacReady started to rise. I'll go look again. No. Palmer grabbed his arm and held him back. I mean, it's made by a different manufacturer than the missing unit. It'll fit. MacReady breathed a sigh of relief. Shit, Palmer. Don't do that to me. Hold the light for me, will you? Palmer reached in and grabbed his own flashlight and handed it to MacReady. Then he wormed his way back underneath. A little higher, Mac! MacReady raised the twin beams. Palmer's hands came into view. Their breath was already starting to freeze as the temperature continued to fall. He held the lights as steady as he could while Palmer worked with increasingly clumsy, numb fingers. Somebody definitely messed with it. A hose clamp was slipped into place, tightened. We going to make it? Hope so. Another 15 minutes. Palmer was beginning to sound more confident. I wonder what happened to that auxiliary. What I don't get is... He was interrupted by a violent, thunderous screeching. MacReady froze. He'd heard that sound twice before now. Once on the tape salvaged from the Norwegian camp, and once far out on the ice. He thought of Bennings as his heart began to hammer against his ribs.